Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Stitch Sessions. This week's tutorial is going to be working on this really sweet little lamb motif. And what I've done in this project is I've actually turned it into a hexagon motif as part of a blanket that I'm working on, which you will be seeing in a future tutorial. But for this week, what we're doing is we're just focusing on how to create the little lamb themed motif. So he's got this sweet little face. We're going to show you how to make the ears and go along the top to make his little hair, I call it, on his head. And as long as you know how to crochet a circle, this should be pretty straightforward for you. Even a fairly new-ish crocheter should be comfortable enough to do this, and it will make for a really sweet applique or add-on to any other project that you may be doing. So let's grab all of our materials together and let's dive right in. Okay, let's get started. So to create your lamb motif, you're going to need whatever desired yarn you prefer, a couple of different colors. So I've been using this Caron Simply Soft Party yarn for the face. And then I've got a bunch of this leftover. I believe it's the Super Saver by Red Heart, this variegated yarn, which is so pretty. And I've been using this for around the face and the ears. You'll also need a little bit of scraps of a different color to create the eyes and the mouth. So I've been using different colors. So I've got some leftover teal here for my eyes, and I'm going to use a little bit of black for my nose and mouth. And for this project, I am using a 5.75 millimeter hook, also known as an eye, it looks like, or a size 10. Okay, and of course, as always, you need a pair of scissors and a darning needle for sewing in all your little ends as we go along. So let's begin. So I've got a few of the faces already started here, so I'm going to take you through how we crocheted it. It's just 2 rounds of a crochet circle. We're going to begin with a magic ring. So you just create a loop, insert your hook, and pull through the long yarn. That's going to create a loop there. And then usually I'll just grab the end so that it has some tone there, and I'll chain 1 to secure my magic ring. Make sure to get that tail out of the way. Okay. And what we're going to do now is we're going to chain 3. And then we're going to proceed to do 11 double crochets into this ring. And we're going to do 11 because this chain 3 counts as 1. So we will have a total of 12 double crochets into our ring. So you'll yarn over and insert your hook, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, and pull through the second 2. So we've got 2 double crochets technically, and then we're going to work our way up to having 12. And this is my 12th one here. Okay, and now I'm going to take that little short tail and I'm going to cinch my circle shut. Okay, so you have something that looks like that. And then we are going to slip stitch to the top of our chain 3, which is right there, and that will join our circle completely together. Okay, so you have something that looks like that. Okay, and then later on we will weave in that end there. So round 2, we will chain 3 again. And now we're going to place 1 double crochet. See how there's that space right there? We're going to double crochet back into that same space. So for this round, what's happening is we're double crocheting twice into each stitch because we want to increase our stitch count. So technically the chain 3 counts as 1, and then the second double crochet. So we've got 2 in there. So I'm going to go into the very next stitch, which is this one right here. And it's easy to miss it because it's next to that chain 3 and it easily gets pulled apart, but you want to make sure that you get in there. So it's right there. And as always, if you're ever unsure at the end of your work, just go backwards and count. So there's one double crochet, and here is the second one into the same stitch. So that's what we're going to do for round 2. So at the end of round 1, we had 12 stitches. At the end of round 2, we're going to have 24 stitches in total. Once you get to the end, you will insert your hook into the top of your chain 3, slip stitch to join, and then we are done with the initial part of our face. Okay? Okay, and once you're done round 2, your work will look something like this. We can snip our yarn off because we're now done with the white for a little while. And we now have 24 stitches in total. We're now going to introduce the, I guess we'll call it color B. And just to show you, I've already got a few of these motifs started because I am working on it as part of another project, which there will be a tutorial coming up shortly on this whole project I have going on. So for now, what we've done is we've done 2 rounds, which have created the face. Now we're going to go around the edge to create the little, I guess we'll call it the fur around the face. So, and by the way, you can do this in any color you want. It's just, again, I had a lot of this yarn left over and I thought it would make for a colorful motif. So we are now going to create the outline of the face, and then we're going to talk about creating the ears as well as the little sheep's wool, we'll call it, along the top. Okay, so that's what we're moving on to next. So we're going to take our yarn, and you can start with a slip knot. And you can fasten it anywhere you like. I like to just always start somewhere away from the initial tie off. That way I can work over that edge so it doesn't create an extra bump there. So I'm just going to insert my hook anywhere along here. And what you're going to do is you're going to slip stitch to join. Okay, so for this first round, we are now going to be working with single crochets just to create the outlining of the face. And we still want to increase because we want our circle to stay flat. So we've slip stitched to join, you'll chain 1, and then you'll go back into that same stitch and do a single crochet. So that will be our first stitch there. Just going to pull that tail. Into the next stitch, you will do 2 single crochets. And I am just working over my short tail here. So 1 and 2. Into the next stitch, and this is where it can get tricky because we're coming up to our little knot here. Okay, so just pull your work apart a little bit. So the next stitch would be right there, and the following stitch would be right here. So this is just where we tied off. So be careful not to put into both of those spaces because it'll give you extra stitches. So, and by the way, some people might go into here instead of here. Either or would work. You just don't want to go into both of them. So I prefer going into here. So we're going to go into that space and we're going to do 1 single crochet. And then we're going to go into the next stitch, which is right there, and we're going to do 2 single crochets. So just make sure you get under both loops. I'm working over that tail, or those tails. So there's 1, and there's 2. Okay, and so you're going to continue with this pattern until you have 8 stitches remaining, and then I'm going to meet up with you then. Okay, so I have 8 stitches remaining and my work looks something like this. Super adorable. Now what we're going to do is we are going to create our first ear. So we are going to chain 8. Once you've chained 8, we are going to slip stitch or do a picot effect. So do you see how that's the top loop there of the original single crochet? You're going to insert your hook into that as well as into that bottom leg there of the stitch. So you've got 2 loops, and we're going to slip stitch there to join. Okay, and there you've got your ear. So once you've done that, we are now going to create the little puffs at the top of the head. We are going to use the triple crochet stitch for this effect. So you will yarn over twice, and now what you're going to do is you're going to go into the front loops only. Sorry guys, I don't know why my camera's. You're going to go into this front loop only. So you will yarn over, pull through, and so we're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2. You've got 3 loops remaining. You'll yarn over and pull through the second 2, but you're not going to resolve that, okay? We're going to go back in again into the same stitch, yarn over twice, insert back into that loop, remember only the front loop, pull through, so you'll now have 5 loops on your hook, okay? You're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2. That'll leave you with 4 loops on your hook. And then you're going to yarn over and pull through the second 2. So what we have here is your original loop and then 2 unresolved triple crochet stitches. And that's exactly what we want. We are going to do 1 more of these. So you'll yarn over, back into that original loop. Sorry guys. You'll yarn over twice. Insert to pull through. So now you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on the hook. You'll yarn over, pull through the first 2. You have 5 loops left. Yarn over, pull through the second 2. So you'll now have 2 loops on your hook. Okay. And now we're going to yarn over and pull through all 4 of those. So what that does, whoops, is it clusters these together. So see how it creates that cool little effect? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the very next stitch. That is a front loop, and we're going to do a single crochet. See how it bunches it down like that? That's what we want. Okay. A lot of times you would work backwards where you'd puff it out the other side, but this is how we're doing it here. Into that same loop, you're going to do a second single crochet. And so while we're creating these, we're still maintaining the proper stitch count. So at the end of round 3, you will still have 36 stitches to work into for the subsequent rounds. Okay. And now that's what we're going to do 3 more times. So into the next stitch or into the next front loop, we're going to do 3 triple crochet clusters, okay? So you'll yarn over twice, insert, pull through, 4 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2 only, then yarn over and pull through the next 2. Whoops. Careful not to split your yarn. And then the second triple crochet, yarn over twice into the same front loop only, pull through, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops only. You'll have 4 remaining. Yarn over, pull through the next 2. You'll have 3 remaining. And one more time, yarn over twice, same loop, pull through, yarn over to pull through the first 2. You'll have 5 loops remaining. Yarn over and pull through the next 2. You have 4 loops remaining. You now will yarn over and pull through all of them. And it's always best to keep your hook facing down when you're pulling through. That way you can get through fairly smoothly. So now we're going to go into the next loop and see it's naturally going to bow out. That is what we want. We'll go into the next front loop, which is right there, and then you're going to insert 2 single crochets into that stitch. Okay, so there's 1 and there's 2. And don't worry if you feel like your stitches are getting stretched out. They will relax once we move on. Okay, so we've got 1 ear made and 2 little puffs there. We need the other 2 puffs, and then we're going to do the other ear, and I'll meet you up when we're there. So finish that off. We just did the 2 single crochets. In the next loop, we're going to do the triple crochet cluster, 2 single crochets, triple crochet cluster, and I'll meet you there. And I'm just doing, whoops, my last single crochet into that loop. So these are all worked in the front loops. Okay, so now you've got your little face happening there. It's adorable. So we went into the front loops because that leaves the back loops free to then work into when we come around the other way. So when we add the motif, we're going to add a hexagon motif onto this. We can work along the back loops. Okay, so now we just need to do the other ear. So before we slip stitch to join here, you're going to do your chain of 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you're going to slip stitch into the bottom of this one, just like picot style. So in through the top loop there of the single crochet, and then into the side leg of that stitch. As long as you've got these 2 loops here, you're good. So we're going to slip stitch there because that closes off the ear. Okay, just like that. And now we're going to slip stitch into that next single crochet, and we're done our little outline. So just pull up a loop. I'm going to snip my yarn here. Okay, and then I will just chain 1, pull that through, and fasten off. And there's our little lamb face. Very adorable. Okay, so let me just pull up my other one here. So a lot of these look different in the motif. So this one is my favorite one that came out. Now you can use buttons for the eyes. I just decided this is for not quite a newborn, but about a 2 or 3 month old baby. I'm working on a baby blanket. And I just thought the less possibility of things coming out so they can swallow, the better. So I just sewed my eyes in. You can actually make little circles if you like. I experimented with a few different things, but being as small as it was, it just started getting very testy. So I just used bits of yarn. And you see sometimes the ears don't sit how you like them, but I just think that's what makes them a little bit more endearing. And I've got another motif here. So a lot of times I was experimenting along the way. So this one, the way I did the eyes just gave it a slightly different expression. But that is the main idea. So you've now got the face portion done, the outline with the ears and the poofs, and now we're going to go on to creating the hexagon motif around it. You can actually, if you wanted to, you could simply just stop here and go on to the face detail and use this as an applique, absolutely. Or even add just one more round in the white to make it look, make the lamb look puffy and chubby. Totally up to you. So if you're happy with this, you can just leave things as they are here. Because I'm doing this as part of a motif blanket, I'm going to create a hexagon shape around this. And if you are curious, I've also done in the past a tutorial on how to turn a circle into a hexagon shape. So if you wanted to do that without the actual lamb detail, just a regular circle and turn it into a hexagon shape, actually, just like this guy here. So I did this one without the face. I have a tutorial for that, and I'm going to link it down in the description box down below and also somewhere up here in the cards. So in the meantime, we're going to move on to taking our face and creating a hexagon shape around it. Okay, so we are back to using our white, and we're going to begin with a slip knot. Now we're just going to pick up our motif, and I always like to start whenever I've joined a new yarn somewhere behind where it can be hidden. So usually I'll start behind an ear or something. So we've got our 36 stitches, and I'm going to just find a spot somewhere behind here. Now for this round, I'm going to be working into the back loops only of all the stitches. And what that does is it pushes these forward loops forward, and it just creates a little bit more of a defined shape for the face. And it's a personal preference, actually. You can work directly into the full stitches. I mean, even around here, you can do that. I'm just choosing to work into the back loops. And you can go into these back loops here, and I've experimented with different ways of doing it for different motifs. So I went into the back loops here, and then you can just sneak over into these back loops. And what that does is it helps the front to just sit nicely against the motif. Both are okay. I sometimes actually like working into the back loops of the tops here, because what this does is now the little top of the head will sit flush, and especially if you've got little hands pulling on the ears as babies do, just helps it sit a little bit nicer, and after a few washes and things, it'll always sit nicely on there. So that's what we're going to do. Now, after that long-winded explanation, here we go. So I'm just going to find my first ear here, and I'm going to push it towards me. And I am actually going to go into, see where that first chain is coming out of? I'm going to insert my hook into the back loop of that, just like that. And I'm going to slip stitch to join. And that'll be our little hidden spot there where the join happens. So I'm just going to slip stitch. There we go. And now we're going to go back to working double crochet stitches. So we're going to chain 3. And now we're going to do another double crochet into that same stitch. Don't worry that that loop is loosening up, because it will relax as your work continues on. So that's a double crochet. So there's our increase. And now we're going to work 2 individual stitches into the next stitch. So I'm turning over my work here. So we've just worked into the stitch that this ear is coming out of. So the next back loop is actually right here. Okay, so we're going to yarn over and insert into that back loop. Right there. Pull through and resolve your double crochet stitch as usual. If this makes you a little bit frustrated, you can dip down into these back loops here, okay? And then when you come over, you're just going to skip up to here. If you're a little bit inexperienced, it may bunch on you. So that's why I'm showing you guys how to do the back loops along the top, and it'll sit very, very nice. So now we're going to go into the next one, and the back loop is right there. And I realize this yarn is variegated, so it can be funny to see, but this is the front loop and that's the back loop. So I'm just going to insert right into there and do a double crochet. Okay, and that's our pattern for this round. So this is round 4. We're going to do an increase and then 2 individual stitches and increase 2 individual stitches. So it'll be 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. Okay, I'm going to do that again with you guys just to get you over this hump here. Yarn over. I'm going to find the very next stitch, which is right there. And this is where we're going to do our next increase. So that means 2 double crochets. There's one. And there is the second one. Okay, now we're going to do 2 individuals. So we're going to go into the back loop of the very next stitch, which is right there. So that's 1 double crochet. Now we're going to go into the very next stitch. The back loop is right there. And another double crochet. Okay, so go ahead and continue that pattern. I'm going to meet back up with you just as you get to this ear, because I know that could be that may be a little bit tricky to get around, but I'm going to guide you through it. So finish coming up around here, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, and I'll meet you back here in a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'm just coming up to this last one here, just before the ear. Okay, so I've done my increase. I have a single. I'm going to do an increase here. I am going to work into this stitch where that chain comes out of. So I'm going to go into that back loop just right there. I'm going to do 1. I'm going to do 2. And now we're going to do our 2 individuals. So just going to push this little ear forward. And we're going to go into this very next loop here. Okay, that's where we kind of slip stitched it in. And that helps the back, the palette, I call it, sit nicely so the ear can sit in front of it and closes up any gaps. So it's going to be a little tighter because that's where we slip stitched. So you're going to have to help it along. So it's right there. And just giving it a little bit of help to go through there. There we go. And yarn over to pull through and double crochet. Okay, see, now our ear can sit nicely over it. Now the next one is not going to be here because that is the knot where we finished our round. So the next one is going to be right there. So that's where we're going to go. Okay, and then you're just going to work your pattern as usual. So we've just worked around the ear. And see, now our ears sit nicely on top of our palette there. So now you're just going to continue on. The rest of the round should be fairly easy into the back loops. You're going to work an increase, which is 2 double crochets. And then single, single, double, single, single, double, single, single. Single meaning individual stitch, not a single crochet. We're working doubles. So do that all the way around until you get to the very last stitch here, okay? And then you're just going to slip stitch to join. Now, I will just warn you, sometimes when you're working into funny motifs like this, you may get to the end of the round and go, holy cow, I'm missing a stitch, or I've got 1 stitch extra. Don't fret about it. If you have the extra one, then don't worry. Just ignore this chain 3, and when you slip stitch, go into the top of this very next stitch, okay? And if you have not enough, just do an extra one at the end. So all in all, nothing to worry about. Just continue on right now, and then I'll meet you back up here at the end. So you should have 48 stitches at the end of round 4. So I ended up having my 48 stitches exactly as I had planned. So I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch to join. And for me, that means I'm going to slip stitch at the top of my chain 3. If you ended up having 49 stitches, go ahead and slip stitch to the top of your actual stitch. I'm just going to show you what will happen. So all it does is it just ignores the chain 3 and it just pushes it to the back. Just like that. It creates a little bit of a snuggled look. So it's not a problem at all. Okay. Now I have the proper number of stitches, so I am just going to slip stitch to the top of my chain 3, which is right there. So there we go. Okay. Now you'll notice that we still have a circle, which is perfectly fine. So like I said before, if you wanted to use this as an applique and you wanted to add the little extra round in the white, you could. If you wanted to just leave it as such, I probably wouldn't have done double crochets. I would have done another round of single crochets or even half doubles just to kind of make it a little shorter. Now you'll notice because we worked into the back loops, see this front loop just creates this nice little shape, defined shape there. So it's just a matter of personal preference, but that's how I like it. Okay, now we're going to turn this circle into our hexagon shape. So we know that a hexagon has 6 sides. So you would take your stitch count and divide it by 6, and that will tell you which stitch must have an increase into it now. So 48 stitches is the perfect stitch count because we divide that by 6 nicely and it gives you 8. So what that means is we're going to double crochet into every 8th stitch. We are going to do an increase or create a corner. And a corner is slightly different than an increase because there's a chain 1 involved. So I'm going to take you through that right now. So we are going to begin by creating a corner right off the bat because we're right at the ear. And so that means we'll have a corner here and one at the top. So this will kind of center our face so that it sits kind of upward. Okay. So to begin our first corner, we're going to chain 4. And the reason why we chain 4 is because this is going to count as a double crochet plus a chain 1. And then you're going to double crochet back into that same stitch that you slip stitched out of. Okay. And then I'm going to explain what our corners will look like. Okay, so this is creating a corner. Unlike a regular increase where we just did 2 double crochets into 1 stitch, a corner usually consists of a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. And of course, depending on the project, some projects call for the corners to have 2 chain stitches here, and sometimes even more than 1 double crochet on each side. For this project, our corners will always have 1 double crochet, chain 1, 1 double crochet. Now what we're going to do is just proceed to do 1 double crochet into each of the next 7 stitches. Okay. And we're just going to work right into the full stitch for this round. So 7 double crochets. Okay, I've done my 7 double crochets. So we've got our corner and our 7 double crochets. Into our 8th stitch, we're going to work our corner, which will sit nicely right at the top of our head there. So you'll yarn over into the very next stitch. We'll do a double crochet and we'll chain 1 and double crochet back into that same stitch. Just like that. That's our 8th stitch. Now we would just proceed to do 7 double crochets into each of the next 7, and your 8th should fall somewhere close to your ear, and we'll do a corner, which is double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Okay, so I'm going to do that once more with you guys. I'm going to do my 7 double crochets and then take you through the corner. Okay, and now this is my 8th stitch. So now I will work 1 double crochet again, chain 1, and 1 double crochet. Okay, so now you can see you're starting to get some defined corners being created. Okay, so that's it, guys. So that's the pattern we're going to do all the way to the end. At the end, you should have 6 sides to your work, and you're going to have a total of 60 stitches in total. So I've got my last stitch in this round, and this is my 7th stitch, and guess what? I'm right back at my corners. So my count worked out beautifully. So I'm going to find the top of the chain 3, because remember this is chain 3 plus 1, and I'm going to slip stitch there, slip stitch to join, and that is how we create the motif shape. Sorry. And that is how we create the hexagon shape. So now you should be able to see that you've got some definite corners happening. Sometimes I like to just put my work down and lay it flat and pull at the corners. Now some people would say, see, that's why I would do a chain 2 in the corners just to make it more defined. But I actually want mine to not be so sharp for my motif. But as always, it's totally up to you and what you like. So of course this chain 3 is always a little bit less defined in the beginning. So before, you could just leave this as is. Again, I'm adding this as part of a motif blanket. So I'm going to do now a finishing round with single crochets, working into the back loops only, and then working in my corners as usual, which should bring it a little bit more to life. And I'll show you kind of what I have done here. I've already started sewing some of my motifs together, but you can see I did a little finishing round here, and those front loops coming forward just give it this really nice little definition. So you can see where my corners are, but I didn't want it to be a motif of really sharp angles. So that's why I just stuck to the chain 1. And I'm pretty happy with how that came out. So that's what I'm just going to take you through here just to finish off our little lamb hexagon motif. So you've slip stitched at the top here. What I'm going to get you to do is go into that corner space and slip stitch into there. What that does is it gets us working out of the corner nicely. So you will chain 1, and then you're going to single crochet back into that corner space, just like that. Then you'll chain 1 and single crochet again into that corner space. Okay, so you're basically creating another corner on top of a corner. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work our stitches along the way into the back loops only. Now we did 7 stitches in between each corner, but now we're creating a new corner here. So now we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches we're working into before we hit that corner. Okay, so once you do your single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, we're going to work 9 stitches into the back loop. Now what's really important, this first stitch, it's very easy for it to get snuggled and hidden there. So a lot of times people will go into here, but make sure you just pull this work aside because this is officially the first loop. So you want to insert your hook into the back loop, pull through, and single crochet. And into the next one, just like that. So you will work 9 stitches before you hit your corner. And this was my 9th stitch here. So now you can see, I just love how that creates that beautiful little ridge there. We're in a corner, so now you're going to work into the corner space. You're going to single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet. Okay. So now on each side, you are going to have, if you count the stitches between the spaces, so right now we're not really counting the chain stitches, okay? So if I just count from the chain space, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so between each space, you're going to have 11 stitches. So that means at the end of our motif, times it by 6 sides, we're going to have 66 stitches in total for the end of our particular motif. Okay, so go ahead and finish your round, and then I'll meet you back up here when we're ready to slip stitch and fasten off. Okay, so I have now done my round, and what I'm going to do is you can keep it very simple by just slip stitching into that first single crochet, because remember we did a chain one here. So wherever you can nestle your hook, you're just going to slip stitch to join. And I'm going to snip off my yarn. And we are done. So a lot of times what I like to do at the end of a motif, instead of doing the slip stitch right there, and then now you can certainly do this and then just fasten off like that. I usually like to, I'm just going to pull that one out. Just before I slip stitch to join, I snip off my yarn. Just like that, and I pull it through. And I like to use a technique, I think they call this the seamless join. It's kind of a neat way to hide your end of a project. Now, because we're sewing this motif to another, it's not going to really make a big deal because we're going to sew all these edges in together anyway. But just for future, if you were leaving this edge as is, a really nice way to do this is to pull this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the top of that first single crochet and insert our darning needle just like that. Pull it through. And now we're going to go back in through the top of the last stitch we worked. Just feed it down through. And then you just pull it, whoop, not too tight, pull it snug. See that? It looks just like another stitch, and you can't really tell where the beginning and end is. And that's why I love it so much. So now just at the back here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to weave it in and out just to hide it. And basically you're just weaving in your end as usual. So just go back and forth a few times. Maybe pick up a couple of other stitches. Just like that. Okay, so I've woven in all of my ends. And there is my hexagon motif with the little lamb face on it. I just think it's so adorable. So the final touch is just to add the little face details, which you'll just need a little bit of scrap yarn for. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of black yarn actually, and I would just cut, I don't know, maybe about 12 inches. You really don't need a lot, but it's better not to run out, that's for sure. So you're just going to feed your yarn through. And the idea is to create the little nose and the mouth outline. So what we're going to do, and for this project, I mean, I'm just turning the back here. I wanted you to see that I didn't really worry too much about the stitching in the back. It is the back of a blanket. You can, if you really want to, take the time to weave them inside the backs of your stitches. It all depends on how much patience you have. So completely up to you and the type of yarn. So if it's a very thin yarn, like this particular yarn is quite thin. So even if when I do weave it in, because it's a dark color, it's still going to show through. So I didn't worry too much about it. So I'm going to start by coming right up through the center from the back. I'm just going to pull up my yarn and leave a bit of a tail. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into the space that's directly below it. So, you know, you can kind of work it out with your yarn needle here. I can go, okay, so that stitch is pretty directly below it. So just feed it through. And again, I don't want to pull too tight because I don't want my work to pucker, but there we go. So it's just sitting nice and snugly. And now what I want to do is I want to come back in from behind right about there. So that's approximately about 2 stitches up. And I'm just going to feed my yarn through again, making sure that it's not puckering. And then I'm going to go back into the bottom of this middle section here. Okay, I'm going to feed that through just like that. And now I'm going to come back up the other way to my left, and right about there, I'm going to feel that with my, whoops, that one right there. I'm going to bring it back up, and then I'm going to go back into that same spot there. Just like that. So that created the little snout for our nose and our mouth. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up through the center again. And now I'm going to create another angle up this way. Now I don't want to go all the way into that stitch. I want to stop maybe just short of that. So I'm going to go into the center of that double crochet stitch there. Let's see. I'll probably go right around there. Again, this is an eyeball project, so you look and see how you like that. I think that ended up perfecto. Then again, I come back up through the center. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. I kind of want to look and see what looks fairly even and just insert into the stitch. I don't want to work at the top of that stitch. I'm going to insert somewhere inside that double crochet. Perfecto. I love it. So there is our mouth and our little nose detail. Okay. Now, you can tie off here and then go in separately for the eyes, but because I'm going to keep the eyes the same color, I'm not going to tie off just yet. So all I'm trying to do in the back, because I'm not going to hide it, I am just going to keep them as neat as possible. Okay, so now for my eyes. So if I look back on here, I just kind of created little slanty eyes. Kind of looks like he's sleeping. So I'm going to find a spot somewhere along the top. See how this inner circle, our first circle, somewhere along the top here. So I'm probably going to, I'm actually just going to come up through the middle there, this stitch, and then I'm going to slant a little bit over to the side to work into the loops of that double crochet stitch. So not the top of the stitch. I'm just going to feed it through, just like that. And then I'm going to go back down to this stitch here. Now, if you're working on it and there's something you don't like, just gently pull it back out. Okay. Okay, so I just did something funny and I wanted to show that this stuff can happen and not to panic. So I was so excited with how I did my lips and my nose, and then I was doing the eyes, and I realized that it's not centered to the face. So really the face is this way and the ears are out here. So really this should be turned so that it's facing down here. But this can look like a quirky little face, so it's completely up to you. I myself am going to take all this out and actually center it properly just because that's what I want. But again, it's all how you like it. So the moral of the story is don't panic. So I'm just going to pull these out very gently and start again. But I think you get the gist of how to create your lips and nose and eyes. So I'm not going to go over it again on camera, but just make sure that it's centered. And that's generally how your face will look like. Again, you can maybe add buttons. So buttons if you like. I just chose to do it with yarn. Alrighty, and there we go. I've fixed my little face. I'm super happy with that. And I just kind of tied it neatly in the back, and it's nice and flush. So it should not fall apart at all as long as they wash it, of course, in gentle cycle. And there we have our little lamb motif, and I'm super excited to attach this onto my blanket, and then we will move on to working on the border. So this is part of another motif blanket tutorial. So if you're following along on that, we're going to take you through how to sew your motifs together. and then working on a border for the blanket. So I hope you've enjoyed working along with me on this sweet little motif. As always, if you have any questions, you know you can leave me a comment in the comment box down below, or you can reach me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com, and I'm always happy to answer your questions and help you out. And I'm always super excited that you decide to come along on my crochet journey. In the meantime, guys, if you haven't pressed that subscribe button, make sure you do so you don't miss any of our tutorials, which we upload every Wednesday. You can also find me on Instagram at The Stitch Sessions, and that's _stitch_sessions. In the meantime, have a wonderful day, happy crocheting, and take care.